Hello and welcome to episode 117 of JagaVision. We have these shows going now for the past 117 weeks with just a few breaks here and there. I'm Jared Nyberg. I'm co-owner of JagaSilk, and I am doing these shows to share with you a little bit about our perspective on different teas, to have some guests on with some good conversations and dialogue. And for today, though, I'm kind of going with my August-September theme of just doing these short shows, focusing a lot on sort of a quick and dirty tea interaction. Right now, today, I plan on doing some drinking some white tea and showing you just giving you a little bit of backstory on how we interact with white teas. So we've actually had this Fuding by How on the show a number of times. One time we drank it with the owners of Tea Can, or the owner of Tea Can, over in Vancouver. That was a lot of fun. And we've also cold brewed this tea quite successfully, and it's been really nice to have it as this cold brew tea. We're buying it from the correct region in Fuding, that's sort of responsible for creating those really top amazing silver needles. The Yin Zen, which is the Chinese, my terrible Chinese, for silver needle, is essentially considered the place where you need to get your silver needle from for it to be silver needle. So we have been really happy with this particular one. In a blind cupping, this particular white tea stood out quite magnificently. I really wanted to bring in an interesting white tea last year. So this is again part of we're drinking some teas that normally we want to see gone. We bought some tea last year that I loved, but I just didn't get on the ball with getting the marketing materials done and getting them up on the web page. So if you're in Victoria and you're watching this show and you want to have some amazing white tea, we are actually selling it for 50% off. So if you want to get this incredible tea from 2021, then you should come by. Normally, again, these teas start tasting really unsatisfactory. You get a hint of oxidation and all that stuff. So I am going to taste for that today, and hopefully that's not the case. It's tasting really good in the cold brew, but I haven't had a hot brew of this tea in a little bit. So this is a good opportunity to do a little bit of quality control, sort of I guess a sequel to last episode. But I also want to talk to you a little bit about, again, how we brew white tea. Sherri Anne from Sister Speak should be joining us today. That's the story, and we're going to be drinking some of this tea with her and talking about it. But we've had a little bit of a late start today, and we're not seeing her yet, so it might mean that she is unable to join us today. We'll see what happens. But officially, she's on the call today, she's on the show today, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so white teas. What are white teas? So white teas, I used to always tell people, are a very light oxidation. And what I've come to realize is they are a very light active oxidation, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily a light oxidation in general, because there's such a thing as passive oxidation. There's also such a thing as hard withering. So when you're drying these leaves and you're trying to pause that polyphenol oxidase enzyme from browning the leaves, you let that enzyme actually work its magic for quite a lot longer than you would say for a green tea. So this is entering in terms of oxidation levels more into the world of a crimson tea, but the way that it's gone about is quite different. So you're not doing this bruising and like intensive manipulation of the leaf as it's oxidizing. It's a lot more hands-off, and this approach to making tea is quite new. It does mean that it's very easy for it to get old. Because there's just more opportunities for that to happen, because it's not locked in as tightly as you might see in some of these more traditional teas. But it does create a tea that's really honey-like in when it's done right, and you get this really beautiful texture. There's a lot of, if anything, if I was going to describe white teas with one word, it would be subtle. But there's such a thing as too subtle where you can't taste anything. I think that the reason for that is because most people underdose their white teas. If I'm going to be brewing in this little tiny gaiwan, here I'll show you. So if I'm going to be using this little gaiwan, this guy is holding about 80 mils of water. I'm going to be using 4 grams of tea. So that's 1 gram for every 20 mils. In a larger sort of, probably the highest dilution I would want to do is 1 gram for every 30 mils. But having a little bit more than that is going to make a difference. You want to really make this tea with some oomph, and because of the way it's processed, there's an opportunity here for it to be underwhelming if you're not careful. So white teas in general I find to be that way, but yin zens or silver needles are particularly so. So I'm going to preheat my teapot with 90 degrees centigrade water. I don't like to put boiling water on such fragile tea. I know that a lot of people do it for the gong fu cha. They're going to do it even for their white teas. But I think that there's more and more folks that are totally understanding why you might choose to use a lower temperature for your green teas and your white teas. This hard wither, or this kind of more intensive passive oxidation that does control this enzyme and does eventually kill it for white tea production, is a result of the environment that it's made. So that's one of the reasons why people are really set on Fuding being an incredibly important region for you to process. Because if you don't have the right ambient environment for this tea, it's not going to proceed smoothly enough to get you a really ideal flavor. So Fuding, at the time when this tea is harvested, at the end of March, early April, is going to be an ideal environment for these silver needles, these yin zen. So I'm going to drop a little bit of, I'm going to drop my 4 grams that I pre-weighed onto into the gaiwan. And again, look at these leaves, like really feathery. Like if you can believe that's 4 grams, right? And if you're making yourself, like say a 12-ounce tea, and I've never been encouraging folks to make such large teas. I think that having multiple infusions in tiny teapots is a lot more interesting way to go about drinking your tea. But if you're going to do that and you want to dose effectively, you need to use 12 grams of tea at least. If you want to dose the same way as what I'm drinking right now, you're going to up that dose by 33%. So we're talking an extra 4 grams of tea. So you'd be doing 16 grams for your 12 ounces of tea, or your 360 mils of water. That's a lot. And you don't need to do that. Really, drink your tea in small amounts. Now, this tea does love a longer infusion, and some white teas get a little bit unpleasant if you brew them for too long with too hot of water. I found that this tea, even though I don't like brewing it at 100, it can handle it. The reason I don't like brewing it at 100, I feel like I lose some of those aromatics that I think are really a lot more enjoyable in this 90 degrees centigrade water. So I'm just going to double check that indeed I'm looking at a 80 gram. I'm going to show you what 80 grams looks like in this gaiwan. It's pretty full at 80 grams. So you can see that's past my kind of 80% line. It's more into like 85%. So it's probably more like when I drink this normally, it's going to be closer to 75% full, 70% even. And that means that instead of 80 grams, we're going to look at more like 70 grams. So even stronger, right? I like to put the lid on after I preheat it. A lot of my teas that I'm making this style, I'm going to want to I'm going to I'm not a pre-infusion, but I'm going to rinse them. I'm going to put a little bit of water on top, coax the leaves open, and then and wash off any sort of residue is sort of the theory behind it. But I think there's just like a sort of a stimulation of the leaves so that they're happier to open up and give more flavor love than they otherwise might be. I like to do that for my oolong, most of the oolongs that I'm going to be drinking this way, the crimson teas I'm going to be drinking this way. But an example of a tea where I wouldn't say would be like our Jinjun Mei. And why wouldn't I? It's already, the leaves are already fairly open. They're little tiny leaves. I feel like by rinsing them, I'm wasting some really lovely flavor gifts. Again, but when they're tightly rolled, or where they're long and like tightly rolled into kind of twisted swords, that kind of idea, not as much of an issue when I rinse them. But if they're mostly already open, the visual on the leaf is one of very little sort of rolling or twisting. I'm less apt to give it a rinse. Also, if it's a deeper oxidation, I'm more likely to give it a rinse, and so you could probably go both ways with your white tea. Um, Most times when I'm making gongfucha, I like to make it where I'm doing these very fast flash infusions of about 20 grams of, about 20 seconds, using a similar ratio. So 4 grams of tea, 70 grams of boiling water is what I would normally use again. So, um, yeah, but I love to sort of take a little peek. I know that's not really correct to do, but I love giving a look and giving it a smell. Yeah, it smells amazing. I kind of have a little bit of confirmation bias. I'm expecting this tea to taste a little bit oxidized. There's a reason why it's going on to our website at 50% off. 2021 white tea. It's like putting a green tea out there from 2021. It just doesn't make sense. Now, that being said, and I think we had again Claudia from Tecan on talking about this. There are some white teas that you purposefully age. So it's not that you can't. And I've even seen some really interesting bricks made with white tea that age really well. But when they're yin zen and they're open, young leaves, a little bit harder to get a nice product that's aged. So when this hits the 4-minute mark, I'm going to be dropping it into this decanter here. I'm a big fan of decanting. I was actually talking to somebody today who was talking a little bit about filters, and so I don't like to filter some teas. I do like to filter others. White teas, when they're pretty decent quality, are going to be processed to the point where you're not seeing a whole lot of sediment. Actually, seeing a lot of sediment is a sign of a white tea that's perhaps a little bit compromised or problematic. So yeah, let me see. So I'm going to see if I can't get our guest on here even for a moment. And if I can't, I can't. But it would be nice if we can. So I'm going to add people. There we go. Okay, so that's almost ready. It's actually hitting more like my 4.5 mark. And I like to be closer to 4 minutes. I better hurry here. Okay. So I'm going to strain that out. So again, I like the claw. So I'm going to hold my thumb and my middle finger and my ring finger on the edges, and then I use my index finger to keep the lid on, and I kind of pre-position it so that that it's able to strain. So I, instead of trying to adjust things while it's in my hands, I kind of push down the leaves like that and pour like this. And you're not going to burn yourself if you haven't filled it too full. If you fill a Gaiwan really full, yeah, it's going to be a problem. Oh, and I just realized that you guys couldn't see what I was doing. So again, I'm holding it, like pushing it down like that, and then I'm holding it with my ring finger and my middle finger on one side, my thumb on the other, and I put my index finger on top, and I pour like this. Okay, and in time for Christmas, we should have some apprentice gongfucha sets. And for the tea festival that's coming up October 22nd, the owner of Cloudwalker Tea here in Victoria, he's been on the show a number of times, Eric Smith, is going to be running what's it called, the World Tea Championships. So it's going to be focused on gongfucha this year, and then we'll be doing some matcha whisking next year alongside. And yeah, there is a faint oxidation, mostly in the nose. I'm not really picking it up in the flavor. I mean, it's still a really good tea. So, and I think I've been using it in cold brew, and it's been tasting fantastic. So I think you should be in a good place if you decide that you want to, yeah, just buy it and cold brew it. And you might even find that you really enjoy it hot too. Like, this is not an unpleasant way of having this tea. But again, I would say that the big reason why people kind of underdose their tea is, maybe it's better to show you. So I was saying you guys need to use 4 grams of tea for this little guy. So say you're using a 6-ounce teapot, okay? That's 180 mils. That's going to be, say, for every 30, if you use 1 gram for every 30 grams, you're looking at what? 5. Hold on, let me do the math here. You're looking at 6 grams, okay? But say, so I want to show you again. That's. Oh, just one sec. Could I request another pouch of Da Bai Hao? Thank you. I'm gonna get one of the crew to run me down some Da Bai Hao so you can get a really good sense of this, and then I think I'll be ready to end the show. So again, maybe I'll show you what a teaspoon looks like. So say if I was going to go and you get a teaspoon worth of this tea. So say if you were a person who was into a teaspoon method, okay, and you wanted to put some white tea, a teaspoon for you're looking at 2 grams, okay, and that in reality, thank you. You're going to want to use a lot more than 2 grams. If you were, say, making yourself an 8-ounce drink, which is 1 cup. A lot of people drink 8 ounces of tea at a time, especially if they're not pre-infusing. Okay? You're going to want to, let's do a side-by-side. 8 ounces in reality, 240. 240 divided by 30 grams is 8. So let's look at what 8 grams looks like. Okay, so if you're going to do a visual on this, keep going. We're at 6.7, 7.2. Okay, that's 7.9, basically 8 grams, okay? So side by side on this tray here, that is 1 teaspoon. That is the 8 grams that you would need. So this is a really lightweight tea. That's the other reason why it's so fantastically underdosed. Now, if we wanted to take what I've done for my Gaiwan, and we wanted to dose accordingly, we'd need another 30%. So, 30% of we need another 2.6 grams. So 10.6. grams. What does that look like? Well, I think it's becoming obvious here just how much of a difference 1 teaspoon is versus this dose that you're going to require for making this tea properly. Now these pouches are really big too. I mean, like, there's 40 grams in here, and when they're full, with the full 40 grams, they're quite plump. I'm always kind of amazed at the difference between teas, especially when you sell by mass. So I never have believed in buying tea by the dose, because everybody doses their tea. So when it says it's this many servings, etc., to me that doesn't really make sense. That's not really going to let me see really how much tea is in a particular package. But if you do the weight, which we've done here, look at that. These are both 40 grams. This one in my right hand is a sencha. The one in my left hand is a white tea, Fuding Da Bai Hao, that we're drinking today. I mean, I have my fingers pinched over the top because I opened it, but look at that. Like, that's a fantastic difference in terms of volume. So really, you don't want to be buying tea by volume. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, just good information to have, I think. If you're making a white tea, in summary, you want to dose enough. 1 gram per 20 mils is how I like to have it, in small amounts, reinfused over and over and over again. Another way you can have it is 1 gram for every 30 mils. Brew for about 4 minutes, and this is generally a good formula for yin zen. I like 90 degrees centigrade water. Some people like boiling. Some people like 80. 80 can be very syrupy, especially if you extend that extraction a little bit longer. There's some wiggle room. Don't understeep. White tea understeeped is just as unsatisfying as underdosed. So good luck, and thank you for watching today. So that's our Fuding Dabai how we like to brew it here at JagaSilk, and some lessons that we've learned over the years. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you have a fantastic day. But before we leave, I should probably remind you about a couple events coming your way. We have a session 6 of, I don't know if you can read that. Yeah, you can. So session 6 of 6 right there. That's we have Truth and Dolphin featuring Steve Schmiller at JagaSilk here. You're going to get your tea and dessert included in your price. It's $25. It's my band. I'm pretty stoked about it. Steve is an amazing visual artist as well. You should check out Steve Schmiller's Painted World. He's also a touring musician for about 10 years with a band called The Villains, and so he's going to be doing his solo project for 30 minutes to start off the afternoon, and then Truth and Dolphin is going to come in and do the rest of the show. So I hope you do decide to buy some tickets and come out. It's going to be a really great capping of our musical year. A couple weekends after that, we have the the Victoria Tea Festival Revival. This is our 6th year doing it. Last year and the year before was completely virtual, so this is going to be a really nice chance for you to come and enjoy the hybrid festival. We're going to have the World Tea Championships. We're going to have a tea symposium. We're going to have a tea fair with merchants from all over. And you're going to have a chance to really come and geek out on tea with a really fervent community. So I hope you do decide to come to that as well. For those watching, and please tell others. The way that this information gets out there is for those that are watching to let other people know. If you're watching an archive version of this show and you're interested in seeing some of the music at least, or the symposium, you can also go to where they will be archived. So the Vic Tea Fest Revival has its own YouTube channel. You can look up Victoria Tea Festival Revival or Victoria Tea Festival, and it's going to give you some YouTube videos, for, especially if you put in 2022, it'll give you the current one once it's up. So after, if you're watching this after October 22nd, that's what you're going to want to go look for. If you're there for the day of, though, you can watch the stream or you can come in person. Admission is $10 to $20, sliding scale donation to the International Tea Appreciation Society. And then for the musical tea series, you can see the shows archived on JagaSilk's YouTube channel. You just put in JagaSilk musical tea, and you get a whole litany, a whole roster of really awesome shows. So thank you for watching today. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your week. We'll see you again next Thursday at 2 o'clock here on JagaSilk's YouTube channel. And if you like what you learned today, if you learned anything, or if you just enjoyed the show, please click like, subscribe, and follow. If you click the notification bell, then when we go live, you'll know we went live. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm Jared, JagaSilk, JagaSilk.com. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Goodbye. Okay, so I am going to do a PS here because I realized one of the things that I did that wasn't ideal for the show here is I was using a bag of tea that I opened quite a long time ago, and even though I heat sealed it, there was the potential for that bag of tea to have not been ideal in terms of oxidation. So this is fresh leaves, fresh bag, freshly opened, already smelling a lot more appealing. I'm not getting that sort of old hay oxidation smell, and this is kind of why I'm doing this PS, is when I opened the bag, it looked a lot nicer. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's still very, very good. Yeah, it tastes like kind of, I've always felt this tea tastes like honey butter toast, and that is very present in this bag that was freshly opened. So the other bag, I heat sealed it closed, but it just goes to show that even when you do that, just letting the oxygen out that was in there, and even though you pressed as much as you can out, it's just not the same as a freshly opened bag of tea. Yeah, huge difference. That's lovely. So, wow. Yeah, I'm not even getting a hint of oxidation in the finish, which is where a lot of it was kind of hiding in the that initial brew. Yeah, so if you're in Victoria, come by, grab some Fuding da Bai Hao. Thank you. Peace. Bye again.